And if you did visit backstage.spotify.com/learn, let us know what you think of it. We think it's a pretty neat way of learning Backstage. If you have any suggestions for courses we should put online, let us know, one of the Spotify folks, and we'll be happy to consider that and maybe work on it. Maybe we can make it happen. And if you complete such a course, you can do a knowledge check at the end, and you get an amazing GIF of some of the people who worked on this project. But anyways, thank you so much for joining. This is the Backstage Adopters Community Session, which is our place where we have each month our get-together, where we share news on the community, where we present stuff to each other, maybe a plugin we've worked on, and an adopter story. And normally we have some maintainer updates. But as you might have noticed, it is summer, and the maintainers had a really well-deserved break. And when I reached out to them to ask them, like, hey, do you have anything new? Who wants to come on the show to share something? And well, there's actual footage of their response. Which is understandable because they just enjoyed their vacation. But what happened just before the summer break? Version 1.4 got released. And of course, we release new versions every now and then. But the 1.4 had something special, which was version 1.0 of the search. Himanshu wasn't on a break, and he had a great conversation around it. You can, of course, read the release notes, but there's also the discussion during the maintainer updates. And you can find a recording on YouTube. I hope I'm searching for the recording, but I can't actually find it. But I'm pretty sure that Himanshu, who's backstage, can paste the link in there, so you can be updated. Another thing happened actually today, and that is the 1.5. So what happened in 1.5? Well, new GitHub entity provider is there with some automatic discovery, which sounds quite great. Thank you for your contribution for that. Improving the GitHub discovery processor. Awesome. Some experiments are going on for the plugin reconfiguration, and yeah, some more on the backend system. New plugins, AWS Proton, really valuable for a lot of people. There was a lot of rumor around it. If you're interested in this, take it for a spin. It looks really promising. New plugin for the GitHub issues, really valuable to have that maybe on your entity page, being reminded of these issues that are still open. And for SonarQube, for the backend. Pretty great stuff. Do I forget something? Yes, Bitbucket is here, which is the new model for the backend. Great stuff. I think check out the release notes, and well, we can discuss that, of course, during this session or after this session on Discord. And I'm pretty sure that this will also be discussed in next week's contributors session. Also on Wednesday, same time, different place, because that is hosted on Zoom. Yes. Okay, so there's that. Is there community news? Yes, there is community news. because in October, we will have the very, very first Backstage Con. The CFP is closed, so some people know which sessions have been submitted and are already drafting an agenda. Now, we cannot share anything about that yet, but what we can share is that we heard that it is very promising. It will be a very exciting event, and it's the first one, so you don't want to miss out on that. You can register today. You can buy your ticket for the event, which is a part of the KubeCon Cloud Native Con events. So CNCF is hosting this event as part of that series, and that is why you need a separate ticket as well for Backstage Con. And thank you so much to all the sponsors making this happen. But get your tickets today after the community session, of course. So next week we have another contributor spotlight where you can nominate people who have an excellent, outstanding contribution to the project, to the community. You can nominate people by going to the backstage.io website. Backstage.io/nominate would be the place where you need to end up. And I'm pretty sure that Himanshu is typing and copy pasting all the links in the chat. But yeah, get your nominations in. Contributing is, of course, way more than code. It can be documentation. It can be being an awesome community member, helping somebody contributing code. Who knows? It's up to you. But know that you can nominate those people. More event stuff? Yes, more event stuff. Rody and Frontside are hosting another Backstage Unconference. This time in September. I gotta check the date, September 7. And that looks promising as well. And we can paste in the link for more information in the chat too, I guess. Let me do that myself because I have it. Haha, I have it here. So do check that out, and well, we really hope to see you there as well. Cool, and that's it. If I forgot anything, mention it in the chat, and we'll let you know. If you have anything happening around Backstage you want to share with the broader community, you want to draw some attention to it, please let us know. There's always a GitHub issue open for the community sessions. The link you can find in the chat as well in a few seconds, just to give Himanshu some time. I'm really stressing him out a little bit. I love it. So enough me talking. It's time to move to Sagar, who actually works at a place called Deutsche Bank. Welcome to the show, Sagar. Hello.
Hey, hi, Suzanne. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you well. I'm pretty sure the other people on the other side can hear you too. It's so good to have you on the show. So tell me, you work at Deutsche Bank. What do you do, and why are you here?
Yes, I work as part of the Deutsche Bank, as part of the technology, data, and innovation wider group. So our team, which is the service-oriented architecture enablement team, basically looks after a number of initiatives. And one of the initiatives, what we look after is the reuse, building the reuse item catalog, sort of enterprise catalog, which doesn't yet exist in the bank. We kind of do a pocket reuse in the bank in a very pockets of services, individual teams, or maybe some few different teams. But considering the scale of the Deutsche Bank, it's a huge organization, and the catalog as of yet doesn't exist. And that's when me and our part of the team in the cataloging team looked into a number of options, and I think we figured out that Backstage is one of the tools which tick boxes a number of things which could suit our requirement. And sometime during the last year, October or maybe August, I believe, can't remember the exact date, that's when we started using or piloting the Backstage for the bank, and we have taken it to production fairly quickly, maybe a couple of months after we did an initial POC. and we are here at the moment using a number of features of the Backstage, keeping the Backstage in the bank up to date with 1.4.0. Recently, we upgraded even to the 1.4.0, and yeah, I want to talk about a number of the features which we have used, and also some of the items which may be quite useful for the communities in terms of the how some of the features in the Backstage is useful or usable in a way, because I think Backstage just provides a number of feature sets, and different organizations tend to use it slightly differently. So I think we would want to showcase some of the items where I think the community can be beneficial in terms of those features.
That's amazing. And you started like learning about Backstage, experimenting with it in October. And here we are, it's August, and you're already knowledge sharing here. It must be a good story there. So I would say I'm gonna put myself backstage and try to share your screen as well.
Okay,
Thank you for
excellent.
joining us.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think this is going slightly differently. Okay. Um, so as I mentioned, we are part of the Technology Data and Innovation Group, and we have a subgroup called Group Architecture. Within the Group Architecture, we are part of the Service-Oriented Architecture. So what we do is, as part of this team, is building out the reusable item catalog. We call it as a DB catalog. In the bank, there's a sense of slightly renaming some of the products which we bring. We brought the Backstage, but we still call it as a DB catalog. It's called the Deutsche Bank catalog. Um, so the inception of Backstage into the bank started, as I mentioned, sometime during October last year, where we had a set of reuse items, maybe 150 reuse items, and currently we have roughly around 2,000 reusable items within the DB catalog. And how did we achieve this? We have a number of integrations within the bank, where we had to pull some of the reusable items from, let's say, for example, API management tools, and some of the other tool sets, and majority of them is through the contribution of the community towards this cataloging, actually. So one of the challenges what we faced as part of building out this tool is how do we incentivize people in order to contribute the assets to the catalog itself. That was a bit of challenging. We are still not at there in terms of providing the incentives, at least tangible incentives, if I may say so. So we started a number of engineering day sessions advertising the benefits of putting the assets to the catalog from a creation perspective, where the asset owner creates the content, and also from a consumption perspective, where the user consumes the content. So there are quite a lot of advantages in terms of the creation of the asset, and also the consume, and also from the consumption point of view as well. So I won't go deep into this slide. I think we just talk about a number of incentives from the creation side, and also from the consumption side. In terms of the capabilities, what we use in the DB catalog, so the main intention here is the reuse. We want people to basically come and contribute for the main reused agenda, actually. So the first is getting the components with, or what we call as entities, into the DB catalog. So we have an entity registration process where people can come and it's an automated registration process, which I'm going to demo at the end of this discussion. People can bring in open API, sync API services. We also have architecture decision records, architecture significant requirements, and those sort of steps, which we call it as reuse items in the bank. And that's the main agenda where people come and register. Um, we've got an in-house built-in plugin called Taxonomy. In the bank, there are various different audiences. What do we mean by various different audiences? As in, there are engineers, there are product owners, there are architects, there are domain architects. People may sometimes know what the exact name of the reuse asset is, or they may go to the search and say, provided some search parameters and say what they're looking for. But there are different set of people in the bank where they know the classification of the reuse assets, but they don't know the exact name. So that's why the taxonomy, which is basically how do you basically classify a reuse asset, will comes into the picture, and we have developed an in-house plugin. I'm not quite sure whether that can be open source, because it's quite internal to the Deutsche Bank. We use some of the native capability of the tech radar, and we have kind of enhanced it to provide very much the bank capabilities. I don't think as part of this demo I can give it the information because of the Data Protection Act, etc. We use templating feature from the Backstage, which is nothing but the scaffolding part. I'll show in the demo part how we use this. Tech Docs is where we also invested quite a lot of our time and investment on the Tech Docs, basically using the Tech Docs as a single repository and also utilizing the Backstage developed monorepo plugin. We have also used a community-driven multi-repo plugin as well. This is where the contents in the Markdown files can be managed and operated differently in different repos, but in the Backstage, it just comes as a single. It comes as a single site. This may be slightly useful where um, you have multiple different product owners, or maybe content owners manage their own repo. But from a usability or a consumption point of view, you would want to come and display it in a single repo, and that's where we kind of experimented a number of plugins to be hooked into the Backstage Tech Docs capabilities. Um, we are still investing a bit of time on the building out the analytics. Unfortunately, we are unable to use the Google Analytics, which I think Backstage has developed a plugin for. So we built our own analytics at the moment, which is very basic. We're kind of wanting to improve that later on in the Q4 or maybe early next year as well. In terms of keeping the Backstage up to date, we are very much robust in terms of picking up the new changes which Backstage community provides. Actually, it's a huge community where thousands of people come and contribute. I think it's quite valuable. So we know the need for getting the product updated or the Backstage updated as soon as possible whenever the new releases are released. Recently, probably a month ago, the 1.4.0 got released with a stable version of search, which is V1. We already upgraded our instance to the 1.4.0 and looking forward to 1.5.0. I think it appears that it was just released today. That's a great news for us. So we'll start looking into the capabilities as well. So this is in terms of what we are using in the feature sets of the Backstage so far. So let's go directly into some of the demo capabilities. I want to bring in some of. Okay, hopefully you're still able to see my screen. So we have our own branding page within the bank called Reuse at Deutsche Bank, and a couple of items in here. The catalog, tech docs, explore is basically the marketplace. I'll quickly talk about it. Register is where it's an automated process where people come and register the reuse assets. So as we can see, it's we maintain a different versions, and we already started upgrading to version v1.4.0. So the catalog, currently I can't show any items because of the data protection. So it's a plain, but as I mentioned, we've got few thousands of items in the catalog. So we use the API docs capabilities as well. We've got a number of async APIs and a huge number of open APIs developed and used across the bank. So the tech docs capability is pretty much used. So as I told, the taxonomy plugin is pretty much bespoke to the Deutsche Bank. We kind of support multiple different taxonomies, as you can see here. And let's say, for example, if we are looking from a consumption perspective, you're looking at, let's say, a frameworks, a reusable asset with respect to frameworks. If the reusable assets are associated with the asset classification tags or labels, it's going to start appearing here. Unfortunately, I can't show any of the details because of the data protection again. So we support multiple different taxonomies in this case. And and we use the taxonomy, so the tech radar, which we call it as an information radar, for very different purposes, where the bank is undergoing a huge transformation in terms of migrating the applications to the GCP. It kind of We kind of use the information radar to track on what stage of the migration process the application teams are, pretty much. Our marketplace, which we don't expose pretty much on the left-hand side, looks on the taxonomy information radar, and some of the analytics space and some bespoke plugins which we have developed internally. And coming back to how do people come and register the reuse assets. So as I told, we have got a number of integrations where we pull the data directly into the DB catalog or the Backstage. And some of the items were curated in the sense that we would ask people to come and use our registration process, um, to come and registration process to come and register the reusable assets. So it's mainly in the bank, since we find we kind of use the curated model. We in the team maintain all the asset definition, YAML definitions within our own repository. But I think we are slowly expanding. Expanding to the concept wherein the assets definition files are also stored in the content owner repository, wherein you have the source code, the documentation, as well as the entity YAML definition, all in a single place. But we are not at that. But at the moment, is we are looking into the curation of the assets. So I think while we were trying to experiment the curation process, one of the thing which came into the limelight because of a number of people who have contributed to the community is basically using the scaffolder or the templating capabilities. So what happens is, I'll quickly show the entire process. We've written, we've written a user guide for the users to come and um, look into what fields are available, how to fill out the form, and what fields are mandatory, sort of stuff. It's basically creating a tech docs of the Backstage within the Backstage. How to use the DB catalog within the Backstage, if that makes sense. And basically, what you saw here is what you saw here is we have used the authentication plugin, which is the auth backend plugin of the Backstage, um, pretty much as is, with slight modification that we had to hook in the custom implementation of the bank's OAuth implementation to the OAuth implementation provided by the backend itself. And it was a seamless integration, so we didn't have to write any boilerplate code. It was already provided as part of the community contribution, so that was quite fast in terms of us integrating to the authentication. um, so sorry, and then coming back to the registration process, it kind of lists down who is trying to request it. Currently we support only the component and the APIs. So API comes with 4 different flavors. The component, we support various different components in terms of the library services, architecture, decision record, significant requirement, etc. So let's say for demo purposes, we just carry on with something service, a service and an API. Let's call it as Spotify demo. ignore the ownership. We have a logical business ownership concept within the bank. Unfortunately, couldn't show, just name it as unknown. There are situations in the bank wherein people would want to come and put the reuse asset on an experimental basis to gather a feedback and later on put it to production after the tool itself matures it or the reuse asset matures itself. So a lot of options are provided in terms of the life cycle itself. Um, Links is basic links what Backstage provides. I'll quickly add some links. So the taxonomy classification, as I specified in the few minutes ago, it's basically how does an asset gets classified. Let's say, for example, we're looking at classifying an asset based on some of these types. Um, Tags is again very optional. And then if the entity also has a tech docs, they can specify the tech docs URL and also specify whether the tech docs is actually running in a multi-repo setup as I mentioned. So we do support a multi-repo, which is slightly different to the mono repo. A multi-repo is a contribution from a different community actually. So what happens under the hood? Create. Hopefully it shouldn't fail. The gods of demo sometimes give up on us. So these are the scaffolding actions. Since as I mentioned, we curate the content within our own team. So what we do is we create a Jira ticket within our backlog to address or look into the reuse asset. Kind of uses some bit of a branching strategy, publishes the content. I think pretty much everyone using the Backstage may already know that Backstage, in terms of the registration of the YAML definition in the Backstage, you can directly register the YAML definition, or you can register a location YAML, which has references to the individual YAML files actually. So we use the location YAML file so that we don't have to register few thousand entries one after the other. So we have some kind of groupings based on different business divisions. So there's just one location YAML file which has probably few hundred items under it in terms of ease of registration of the entities. Kind of creates the pull request. We've got a bot. A bot basically reviews the pull request for syntactical validations and semantical validations. When we say syntactic validations, I think as part of, if I'm not wrong, is it probably 1.2.1 release or maybe 1.4.0 release, catalog backend came with the validation endpoint, which basically validates the entity YAML definition for mandatoriness. Actually, it's kind of a syntactical validation. So we hooked in as part of the bot validation, and we also have a number of custom validations defined for our own requirement. And then we merge the pull request if the bot approves it, which I'm going to show, and then update the Jira ticket for whoever has raised the request so that they can track where the asset is in as part of the onboarding process. Click on the open pull request. What it does is a service account opens the pull request. A bot basically does a number of checks and it says found no known issues and it's kind of auto approved it. Since it's auto approved it, it's already merged into the branch. Since it's all merged, it should ideally come and appear as part of the Backstage, which I'll quickly show. But what also happens is if the bot fails the validation because of the failure of the number of validation steps, it kind of joins as an approver, but declines the pull request. And similarly, content gets updated, the data gets updated within the Jira ticket as well. To see how it looks like the content, so I'm going to need to refresh the location, or maybe need to restore the location if I'm not wrong. Okay, so there we go. So this is part of the demo what we had, and the taxonomies card is quite and for Deutsche Bank is lists the asset classification types, etc. Um, and view shows, I think it's pretty much native backstage integration, tagging, and few other things. So this is where and also the links as we entered. So this is how we have defined the process or curated the automation of the assets within the Deutsche Bank. So you might have also seen the raise update request. So it's very similar. We kind of created the template for the update as well. Um, so what it does is it still gathers the requirement or the update content from the owner who was actually wanting to update the request and still goes through the pull request approval, bot review, and then merge it if the bot approves it. If bot doesn't approve it, decline it, and then take it as part of the Jira ticket. Um, and update the content owner regarding the life cycle of the reuse assets actually. I think in terms of what you wanted to demo in this case is the use of the scaffolder. I think a lot of organizations may use the scaffolder very differently. A lot of organizations may come and say that having a curated model of the reuse assets is may not be right. It needs to be within the content owner repository, etc. But that's right. There are multiple different ways of doing it. But I think we kind of leveraged or used um, the scaffolder in a slightly different way. Um, the reason why we had to use the scaffolder in this way is because it's a lot of scaffolding features are already pre-built actually. So we didn't had to write any custom code. All we had to define is a YAML file definition for the scaffolder and write some custom actions for the Bitbucket pull request approval and then Jira ticket creation and that sort of stuff. Um, yeah, I think this is basically what we sort of covering as part of the how we use the backstage, its features, and how have we upgraded, how do we keep the backstage upgraded within the Deutsche Bank, and see if this session was quite useful for the community. And happy to take any questions if anybody has.
Thank you
Susan, I
so
think
much
you're
for
on mute.
showing us this. Yeah, I never have that. I can make a compilation of the past year and then next time. No, so thank you so much for showing this. I think this is also a very good use case for to to show what you can do with templates. There were some questions about that as well. So Emma asked, what happens if the is tech talks in multi-repo checkbox is selected?
Okay, so so what we have done is we have defined a custom annotation within the YAML file definitions. Um, so we all know at the moment that when we use TechDocs capability, the way the TechDocs a site understands the that a content has changed in the Git repo is using the e tag, which is nothing but the commit tag of what's committed on that specific branch in the Git repo, and it finds out if there's any content if there's any commit difference between the e tag with the existing one versus the what's stored in the Git repos. But that doesn't work well with the multi-repo plugin. So we had to do some slight customization to that because with the multi-repo setup, the contents are actually stored in the individual repos where we have just one index repo which references multiple repos. Whereas the content, if they get changed in the individual repos, we have no control over how or when it gets changed because the e tags are all different for individual repos. So we add a custom annotation to the YAML file definition, and based on that, slightly change the processing of the TechDoc refreshes. Basically, we do cache invalidation based on the annotation, different annotation references.
think that will answer the question. Yeah, another question. What happens if the PR review fails? And I have an additional question on that, because like this process seems like automated. So are you also normally having a manual validation process, maybe a release gate or?
Um, so when we say manual validation, yes, but so what we do is the initial step is for the bot to do the so there are various levels of validation. One is the client side validation. Obviously you can put number of restrictions as to what the client side validations could be. Then have a server side validation, which is as part of running the scaffolder actions, you can block executing the number of steps and fail fast. That's a server side validation, that's what we call it. And if the server side validation passes, the third level is the bot validation, where the bot looks at number of syntax as well as semantic validations. And the fourth level is, I think, if all the approval goes through, the bot approves it. And then we have a process, bi-weekly process, wherein we in a team get together and look into all those Jira tickets um, for any discrepancies. So we may have actually missed out a couple of items as part of the automated onboarding. So we may want to have a look into that as well, because nothing is perfect until it is perfect. So we are in the process of creating something called a review forum. I think it's still in the process. But that's the last step of manual process or the attestation, where in most of the cases, we may need to reach out to the owner who has actually raised the registration request for an additional information. And after gathering an additional information, it may necessitate for us to improve the automated process as well. So it's still an evolving process, but I think it's doable. Yeah.
And it's so cool to see that these tickets were auto-created and updated. Yeah, it just makes so much sense. So yeah, last question, because we are at time for this presentation. So yeah, quite an interesting story, of course. What has been the most challenging about adopting Backstage at Deutsche Bank?
Okay. I think in terms of the technical abilities of using the Backstage, I don't think we faced a huge amount of pushback, because there was always a community, and we engage posting a number of questions to Backstage community, also suggesting a number of things to Backstage community to improve. So from a technical standpoint, there were slight glitches when we started using the multi-repo concept, because mono-repo did suit us for some of the use cases, but I think using the multi-repo for the tech docs was a bit challenging actually to the cache invalidation and look into the different e tags for different repos. That's one of the challenges actually. So the main challenge what um, we had and what we have even now is to go and talk to people to come and contribute to the catalog. I think that's been a challenge. I think that will be a challenge going forward as well. So that's why we have a number of what we call as engineering day sessions, where we go and kind of advertise the the incentives of using or contributing to the catalog sort of stuff, and we and talking to different domain architects within the bank as well, to get more information as to how it could be improved as well. A number of people can come and say that it could be improved in 100 different ways, and how do we do it with the limited amount of resources what we have? So it's we need to filter down a number of suggestions provided by different teams, and take which one's the priority sort of stuff. One of the other challenges is the search. Like so how do we optimize the search? Or one of the challenging questions which I do keep getting from different forums what we have in the bank is, do search results get stored and also re-triggered for the next time the same person does this search for the same string? Or is there any page rating? Let's say, for example, you have a page rating for the Google searches or page indexing. Do we have very similar capabilities for the Backstage search? Sort of these sort of challenges what we have. So I think with the search 1.4.0, it's good actually, and in terms of the look and feel, it's slightly better compared to the previous searches. But I think the challenge is still there in terms of the page rating or the search item rating as well. Um, yeah, yeah, I think these are some of the challenges.
I'm sure there's some people watching who would like to discuss more about that. Yeah, there's more questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we of course do not have time to go through every one of them. I have some too, so hopefully you can stick around a bit and answer them in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us, Sakar.
No worry. Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks a lot.
So next topic are, well, maybe not most people's favorite topics if you talk about incidents, but yet here we are. We have JJ on the stream from Rootly. Hello, JJ. Welcome.
Hey, Suzanne. Thanks, everyone, for having me today.
So for those who are unaware, what is Rootly?
Yeah, so Rootly is a incident management platform built inside of Slack. So we help all kinds of customers like Squarespace, Canva, Grammarly, OpenSea build a consistent incident response process. So whether that is creating incident channels, running workflows to remind people what to do next during the incident, spinning up Zoom rooms, and of course, they want to be able to see how their incident data is then impacting the services and entities they've created on Backstage. And that's kind of what we'll showcase today.
Yeah, because we didn't invite you to talk about Rootly, we were invited you to show us a very, very exciting plugin. So let's take a look.
Awesome.
I think you want to share your screen, so I'll stick around a bit.
Share screen. Here we go. Awesome. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes. Got it.
So the first thing I'll mention is we love the Backstage community. Building this was incredibly easy and straightforward. And whenever we had questions, everyone was very helpful. I can't say every community I've been part of has been like this, but this has been incredibly special, and our customers are quite excited about it too. So at Rootly, so what we've done is we've actually built a plugin for Backstage, so you can find it on here and install it by following the instructions. And I'll kind of walk you through today what it does and some of the use cases that we're seeing our customers leverage already, which is very cool. So I'll close this out and I'll go into Backstage here. So I'm just using a very simple demo organization, and I have my Rootly plugin installed, and I've only registered the generic example entity that you guys have on here. So when you go ahead and start importing your various services, there's a couple options. So you'll see this column here that says Rootly service and it says nothing is linked. You can actually go ahead and link this up and connect it with a service that exists inside of Rootly. So inside of Rootly, we actually have our own version of a service catalog that replicates what Backstage is doing. You can use that either standalone, but most of our customers actually prefer just to use Backstage because that's what they're used to. That's what the entire company is standardized on. So I have a couple options here. I can either import this component as a new service, or I can go ahead and just link it up to an existing service that I have. In my case, I'm going to say this is mapped towards my Amazon RDS service. And I'll go ahead and click link. And give it a quick refresh here. And everything is connected up. So next, I'll actually show you what this means in practice. Now this component setup. So if I go into this component here, you'll see on the right-hand side, we actually created this new panel called Rootly. So there's a couple things that you can do here. We're going to start syncing over your incident data, as well as you can view all of your incident history through here. And of course, if there are live incidents that are occurring, which I'm going to show you next, you'll be able to see that information get updated in real time. So I'm going to go ahead here onto Slack, and let me actually make this a little bit clearer. So the way that really works is you can go ahead and declare incidents on Slack very easily. You can also use a web platform, but most of our customers prefer this. So I'm going to click /incident, create new. I will call this one Backstage Demo Incident. For example, I'm going to give it a random severity. I'll say it's a Sev2. And if you remember the services, this one was mapped towards my Amazon RDS service. So I'll say my Amazon RDS service is impacted, and I'm going to go ahead and create this incident. So once the incident is created, we automatically spin up a incident room for you, and we populate a whole bunch of other information, which I won't get into because that's not the purpose of today's talk. But you can see all of the information starting to get populated. You can see my service impact is the RDS service. So if I go back to Backstage here and I hit refresh, you can see that, excuse me, you can see that there's one ongoing incident for Backstage demo. It's a Sev2. So if I go ahead and update a couple details here, for example, if I mitigate this incident, I can see the data starting to get reflected here. It's in a mitigated state. And also my analytics are starting to be populated as well, which is very cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and actually resolve this incident here. I type in /incident resolve. And if I go back into Backstage and I refresh, this should disappear. And perfect, because the incident is now resolved. And very cool, if I go back into the Rootly plugin and I click on my incidents, I have an entire list of all the incidents that were occurring here. So the one that we just created, Backstage demo incident, all of that detail and metadata by, for example, who started it, the environment, the service impact, the state that it's in, will all get populated in here. And all of these, you can customize whatever metadata that you want to show. And if I click this actual incident itself, it'll take me to our web platform where I can see a lot of the details related to my incident, such as my timeline, for example, my integrations, all the different workflows that we're running. And so without even thinking about it, you can start managing these incidents, and we'll keep everything inside of Backstage for you synced up. So whenever you go back, either need to run reports or see what services are causing you the most issues, you can have a very rich audit trail and history of what's been going on with it. And the beauty for a lot of our customers is they don't have to shift over and use a different service catalog tool. They can continue using Backstage, which a lot of them prefer. So I'll pause there, see if there's any questions. Super quick lightning demo in the interest of time.
That's how we like them. that's how we like the demos. Whoa, on fire, one would say. But no, so yeah, this is obviously, it looks also very, very nice, this plugin. So I was wondering, how much effort was it to create this plugin?
Yeah, it actually wasn't all too bad because it was extremely well documented on how to approach it. We were actually able to look at a couple other plugins just for inspiration that Spotify and I believe Rody had built out. So we used some of that framework. It took us all together probably just over 2 days to put everything together, then a couple more days to put the finishing touches on, then start rolling it out to customers in a beta for them to really flush things out, make different requests. But yeah, it's very seamless with Backstage, which we're pretty excited about. But yes, the community was awesome. It was super easy to build on top of as well.
That's good to hear. It sounds almost like a very like Happy Flow to create a plugin. You must have had challenges, JJ.
Yeah, I think some of the engineers that were building it weren't entirely familiar with some of the language that we had to use to build it. At first, we were a very heavy Ruby on Rails shop. That's what we specialize in. We like to think we're experts in it. So whenever we have to deviate a little bit, you have to wire things a little bit differently in your brain to put it together. But once we were through that, everything was fairly obvious. I think even the part that we really enjoyed was testing the plugin. Made it easy. We didn't have to spin up anything overly crazy. We didn't have obscure accounts that we needed to develop on with very tight restrictions. We were pretty much free to do whatever we wanted. So we actually had 6 or 7 iterations of what we showed here today that looked very different before we nailed it. And because it was so easy to deploy, we were actually able to bring on many of our customers that signed up for beta programs to play with it for a bit. And some of them said, oh, this one isn't actually all that useful to me. Have you considered this? So we're able to work closely with them. And because the iteration cycle and ease of use to build on top of Backstage was so simple, we could. In most cases, when we built other integrations, you pretty much have one shot to get it right. Otherwise, you're going through a month-long review process again, and that's going to significantly hurt you as a business, as customers wait for those features. This, we feel like we have a lot more control over, which is fun.
Okay, there's a question here. What do you think are the trade-offs of introducing a new tech stack?
Yeah, I think the biggest trade-off. Yeah, Elvin, that's an awesome question. So most of us here at Rootly, we actually used to work at Instacart, doing very similar stuff. Some of us were the first SREs there. Some of us, like myself, own the product side of the business. The problems that we primarily run into now is actually around hiring very talented Ruby on Rails engineers. Because we index heavily on it right now, there's a lot of great talent and a lot of great potential that we actually just pass on at the moment. So it's forced us to be a little bit more picky. I know it's a little bit off topic, but it's forced us to be a little bit more picky in terms of who we interview and who we hire. And I think in the future, as we scale maybe tenfold, for example, that will change and you can't be in that position. Instacart no longer does that. You just hire anyone that's talented and assume they're smart enough to learn Ruby on Rails. We're still in a position, we still prefer to have people that are quite deep into that knowledge.
Talking about the future, what is next? Will there be notifications in Backstage? What are you building? Are you having plans to build out this plugin? Do you need help?
Yeah, never say no to some help. Love that you mentioned that. So we have a lot of exciting plans. Most of our customers right now are requesting deeper reporting features to be able to, a lot of the use cases around, especially incident management is, you have an SRE team, whether embedded or, spread out, and they have, let's say, weekly reviews where they want to be able to take a really quick snapshot of what they've been doing in Backstage and how it's been impacting their services. And also if they have to report it to their leadership and say, this is an area that we want to invest in, because at the end of the day, for them, reliability is a feature of all of their products. And so being data-driven is incredibly important for them. So definitely around analytics, reporting, notifications for sure, and just deepening the integration with what we're doing here. The main guiding principle is we never want you to be managing incidents inside of Rootly, then having to duplicate any of the efforts in another tool, whether that's Backstage or Jira or anything else that we plug into. So far, I think we've hit the mark decently well. I'm sure there's going to be quite a few edge cases. But yeah, we'd love to at some point come back and maybe we can bring one of our customers and show you live what they've done, which might be pretty cool.
Yeah, let's debug a live incident. using Backstage. I think I'm up for that. But anyways, if you are up for that, let us know in the chat. Thank you so much, JJ, for showing this this plugin. I think it looks amazingly good, and it is a very, very nice demo. So feel free anytime to come back and demo anything you've created. And that brings us to the end of today's adopters community session. So let's go over the things I need to tell you. If I had everything, so we have the contributor spotlight, which is about any contribution to the community or to the project. You can nominate people at backstage.io/nominate. BackstageCon is happening in October, the 24th, and yeah, it's in Detroit. So get your tickets. I'm sure that the link will be in the chat. Next week, there is the contributors meetup with more demos, more in-depth diving into every nitty-gritty Backstage, our favorite open source project and developer portal platform. So please join us there. I hope to see you there. If you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel here to not miss out on videos, we're planning to release quite a bit stuff. So do subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the newsletter if you haven't already to get a recap of this community session and be notified when the recordings are online here or there. Thank you and have a great Wednesday. Awkward wave. There you go.
Excited about Backstage but don't know where to start? Spotify has a new learning experience designed to help you get up and running with Backstage. Get familiar with key Backstage concepts and technical architecture. And with our step-by-step tutorials, learn how to set up, configure, and customize your Backstage app, helping you to reduce onboarding time and making your developers happier, faster. Get started today. Visit backstage.spotify.com